Cool. Right. So welcome to day 3 of the 5-day How to End Emotional Eating mini course. So today we are looking at how to put out the emotional eating fire. Okay. And there's some key points. This is going to take, a bit longer than the others, but this is really important and it's an important message. So first things first, emotional insight improves your life, but, and this is really important, does not cure your emotional eating. Now, I want you to remember that, write it down, because as long as you believe you must overcome all your emotional issues in order to stop overeating, all you're going to be doing at that point is giving your inner critic one more excuse to keep feeding. See, while emotional issues may have lit the match that started the fire and even determine exactly where and what type of fire you're dealing with, once it's burning, that fire takes on a life of its own, because that hyper-palatable, the super creative food, the stuff that lights up your receptors in your brain when you taste it, like a hit of cocaine, I know what it likes like, but they're not natural. They've all been engineered. They did not exist, 100, 150 years ago as we were evolving. And we have not been physiologically prepared to deal with the immense toxic pleasure that they produce. In essence, once the fire has been started, there's an intense biological craving which has been programmed into your neurology. That desire to get high with food which exists independent of any emotional conflict you may be experiencing. Now, listen to that again. That desire to get high with food which exists independent of any emotional conflict you may be experiencing. So what you need to do most urgently, though, is put out the fire, not dive into deep investigation to figure out what started it. You can investigate later on to improve your life in other ways, but please don't get stuck in years of emotional analysis trying to find that burnt match while that fire is still devouring your home. Thankfully, though, right, there is a way to do this, and it's a lot easier than you think. So, how to put out that emotional eating fire? Well, firstly, stop telling yourself you're overeating for emotional reasons, to comfort yourself, to relieve stress. That's a mindset which feeds the fire that gives your inner critic an excuse. Oh, we're way too upset and these feelings are intolerable. We simply must have comfort food to escape them. Instead, remind yourself you're binging to get high with food, much like a drug addict might. This should make it a lot more uncomfortable to you and take away your inner critic's favorite excuse. This is a good thing to do. See, you need to tell your inner critic you're willing to go through any level of emotional discomfort in order to remain binge-free. See, life is not a pain-free experience. You need to accept life on life's terms. Although it may be very uncomfortable at times, you won't distract yourself and or waste your physical and mental energy on recovering from a binge. This energy will then be available to solve the problems you're facing. The only way out of this is through it. And remember, you can hear it several times. If you've got 6 problems and then you overeat, well, then you've got 7 problems. Now, none of this means you've got to get rid of the emotions or fix the problems they represent before you can stop overeating. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. You've got to let your inner critic know you're willing to feel any degree of emotional discomfort and still stick to your plan. See, I remember distinctly having to implement this insight the week my mum died. And then that same week I also learned a good friend had died. And then I had to deal with my family's behavior at my mother's funeral. And before it, you see, life is not a pain-free experience. We're not guaranteed happiness just because we stop letting the inner critic binge. What you get when you eliminate the inner critic's craving for food from your life is life, for better or for worse. But you need to marry your life, not your critic. It's much better to be here and be present no matter what emotional pain life brings than to spend days, weeks or months recovering from the food the inner critic gets you to eat. So I've got an exercise for you here, okay? Imagine this. You are sitting in a dark room. You are looking through a one-way mirror On the other side, you see the person you love the most in the world. It could be your child, your spouse, your parent, your partner. You are going about their day, they're going about their daily business. They're playing, they're reading, they're talking to others. But all the while, there's this clown following them around, screaming nasty, corrupting things into their ear. You'll never lose weight. It's useless. Let's stop playing and go and eat. You've tried 1,000 times before and you've never succeeded. You're a failure. You're fat. Just accept it. What would you do? Would you continue just sitting there and watching it and doing nothing? Would you tell your child to love this crazy clown and try and reason with it? Or would you get mad to the point your hands shook and you could feel your temples throbbing? Would you go into the other room, scream at the clown with all your might and fight it tooth and nail until you locked it in a cage so it could never harm your child again? I think I know your answer. But my question is, why don't you treat your inner critic the same way? Why not harness that same anger you'd feel in the situation above to lock away your own inner critic for good? After all, it's just as harmful to you and your family. Once you get it, and I mean really get it, you'll stop letting emotions confuse the issue. You'll still have them, perhaps even more strongly, but you'll understand they don't run the show. You've simply been lying down, drowning in 6 inches of mud this whole time, when all you ever needed to do was stand up, wash off the mud, and walk away. It took me 30 years to realize this. 3 utterly wasted decades I'll never get back. I'd like to save you that pain, because from the bottom of my heart to the bottom of yours, I know you can do this. So let's go through some emotional issues now. Okay, we're going to go through emotional triggers. I'm going to challenge them. I'm really going to sort of challenge you and your thoughts in this process. So the first one, low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is almost always associated with self-critical thoughts. You might be surprised to learn that overeating and binging actually requires negative thinking. In fact, it's really difficult to continue if you refuse to keep yelling at yourself. And that's because low self-esteem and negative thinking are all binge motivated by the critic. What's really going on is a critic trying to make you feel too weak to resist your next binge. You can tell for sure it's a critic generating all this negative activity, because as soon as you start to even consider eating some rubbish food, its tone changes dramatically. It will start off with, yes, you're horrible, pathetic. Really, when it comes right down to it, you'll probably just always be fat. Well, when you're just going to give up and accept your fate, at least then you might enjoy being a happy fat person. Everything totally sucks in your life. Hey, but here's one good thing, junk food. Then you have some, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, oh, you're doing well, oh, great, oh, you're going to feel better. And that's what happens, I'm sure of it. It happened to me. Those bad records that get stuck in your head and keep playing over and over again, it's just your critic trying to justify eating more junk food. This is a piercing insight, though. Once you understand that all negative thinking about food is critic-based and binge-motivated, it becomes a lot harder to give it credence. Here's a related insight that's even more important for you. Self-love is not necessary to stop overeating, nor is anyone else's love. Now, I want you to know with all my heart and soul that I want you to have love in your life. I want you to find more each day. I do myself. And I want you to have that wonderful people, family, spouse, significant others, children, co-workers, friends who shower you with love. I believe in it, but I do not believe it's necessary to be loved in order to stop overeating. Now, don't get offended and just hear me out. See, as a coach, I've had intimate conversations with thousands of people. So I can tell you definitively there are a lot of miserable fat people out there. People who are generally not going to love the love they need. And yeah, I said fat because I have been, all right? People who do not love themselves as they should. But there's also a lot of miserable thin people who are also genuinely without the love they need in their lives. And also do not love themselves as they should, but who nevertheless continue to eat healthily. Now, the next thought might not be a feel-good thing, which makes me popular with you again, but it's critically important nevertheless. It is entirely possible to hate yourself, have a genuinely miserable life, be furious with everyone around you, be horrendously depressed, anxious, everything. All these things can be true and you can still eat well. As a matter of fact, if you do eat well, despite all these negative feelings, the odds are much better you'll eventually have the energy to do something about your life and make it better. Plus, when you consistently see yourself taking better care of yourself, you will develop more self-love. It's a foregone conclusion. Now, of course, your inner critic will be listening to this, right, and going, don't listen to him, he's just full of horse shit. You don't love yourself enough. Nobody's going to do it for you. Therefore, the only worthwhile pleasure is to eat the junk food. So let's go and binge on some right now. Well, you can tell the critic he can go and choke on my doobie. It makes nothing better at all. Because overeating will only add to your problems. It makes nothing better at all. The next one's self-doubt, okay? How to get over all the self-doubt? Well, there's a simple way. Don't. Assign it to your critic instead and separate your conscious human identity from it entirely. Since it's your conscious human identity that controls your hands, arms, legs, mouth, and tongue. This gives you the power to decide what, when, and where to eat, despite the self-doubt. This is a conscious declaration, not a feeling that doubt about your ability, well, is no longer welcome in your self-conscious. I don't want that. My critic does. I don't eat junk food. I don't eat from the critic's plate. I'm not afraid I might eat it. My critic just really wants it. It's about creating these mantras and abilities. I'm feeling bored. Now, this came out last night, right? Does your inner critic make you eat when you're bored? Well, I've got news for you. The experience of being bored is not the experience of having nothing to do. It's a painful experience of actively suppressing and preventing yourself from knowing your life's purpose. If you knew your life's purpose, every moment would be precious, every last one. You'd be making phone calls, writing notes for a book, organizing projects, going on trips, gathering people around you, and moving things forward and contribute to the world in the way you most wanted it to. Even if that purpose were only to be a better parent, partner, writer, there is nothing that says professional pursuits are more valuable. See, feeling bored is actually a sign that you're pushing through to find your life's purpose, that it's just on the other side of that boredom, waiting for you, beckoning. So when your critic says you must simply eat some food because you're bored and it's intolerable, just tell it to shut up, because you're fed up with letting it keep you from your purpose. You're sick and tired of it getting you to live a much smaller life than you deserve. Sit with the boredom. See what comes. What should you be doing, saying, or being that you aren't now? Who should you be connecting with at this point you've neglected? Where should you be going? See, boredom is wonderful. Embrace it. Walk through it. You just might find yourself on the other side. Scout's honour. Do you know what, though? You don't have to believe me. You only need to try it. After all, what if I'm actually right? The next one we got is feeling deprived. Do you ever feel overwhelmed by feelings of deprivation? Does your critic just say it's just not fair that you can't eat as much? You can't eat as crisps. You can't eat that cheese. You can't eat that chocolate. You can't have that cake. You can't have that pizza. You can't eat pasta. You can't eat bread, bagels, flour, sugar, and other things that really taste good, even though you know they're unhealthy. Or perhaps it says you'll be perceived as too much of a weirdo with your friends and family. Nobody will ever want to eat with you again. You'll be doomed to sit in the corner and eat lunch by yourself like the kid with no friends at school. There are several ways, though, to overcome this deprivation trap. First, remember there are two types of deprivation. There's the kind you feel when you don't indulge, but there's also what you deprive yourself of when you do. For example, if I never ate a donut again, then I've deprived myself of the mouthfeel, that taste, the sugar, the flour rush. And there's no getting around this. I'll feel this deprivation. However, if I do continue eating 6 donuts at a time, I'll be depriving myself of all the benefits of not eating them. For example, I couldn't live nearly as worry-free regarding diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events. I couldn't sail through my day with the presence of mind, body, and spirit provided by regular, even blood sugar. I couldn't be nearly as confident in my appearance, nor enjoy the energy that comes from having the healthy body I can achieve. It's never a matter of whether you feel deprived. It's always a matter of which type of deprivation you'll choose. I'm not arguing that everyone should stop eating donuts. Hell no. What I'm saying is make your choice in a more fully informed state. Stop to think about what you're giving up in both scenarios, not just a short-term loss of immediate physical pleasure. Second, tell yourself you're not really giving that much. Stick with the same illustration, though. What am I really giving up? If in the present I don't eat that donut, then, if I did eat that donut, between 18 and 39 minutes of pleasure I'll have from it is inevitably followed by that crash, which takes hours to recover from. And this will combine with a loss of productivity, more difficulty being present in the world, which influences my relationships, my work, and everything out throughout the day. And it downgrades your productivity and accomplishment. More simply put, it's harder to take control of the day with 6 donuts in your gut than without. The third is remind yourself that if you care about people you're dining with, someone has to go first and be that healthy leader. If you want to set an example to your children, to work colleagues, to other family members, it's important. However, it seems, right, our world has made a tacit agreement to support each other in social environments to slowly kill ourselves with food. So look around that table and ask yourself if you genuinely care about any one of the people there. If you do, then show them it's possible to resist the social pressure. Because if you don't, who will? Because think about this, right? If somebody's going, eat this, have that, they're doing it so they don't feel so bad. By you going, no, I'm okay, might just shine a light on them. And finally, be sure you're eating enough healthy food. People who struggle with overeating are usually very good dieters. They tend to restrict their calories and nutrition for periods of time. But when you do that, you're cycling to your brain that you live in an environment of scarcity. It's only natural then that when your brain sees calories and nutrition are finally more abundantly available, it will try to get you to hoard them. So take yourself out of this feast and famine cycle and eat plenty of healthy food throughout the day. Then you'll have a much easier time with the deprivation trap the next time it faces you. Now we've got feeling stressed and overwhelmed. Not infrequently, our critics will say, oh my God, it's just way too much to handle. We have entirely too many problems, things to do and places to be. No one should ever have to manage so much. It's inhuman. I mean, you can't possibly expect us to go through this without at least a pick-me-up, at least a treat. How cruel and inhuman can you be? But when you step back and think of this, it doesn't make any sense because overeating doesn't solve anything. In fact, it'll give you some pleasure before the crash. But remember, comfort food, a food high, lasts for about 18 to 39 minutes. But you choose, then you're stuck with having to recover. It plays havoc with your blood pressure, digestion, blood pressure, at least several hours. And then if it happens in the evening, it's going to distress your sleep. It's going to ruin your sleep. So no, eating critics' food doesn't solve stressful problems. It creates them. Like I said, if you have 6 problems, then you overeat. You've then got 7 problems. And remember, overeating drains your productivity. It creates more overwhelm, gives you more to do. Then we got feeling lonely, okay? Now, many clients I've worked with report being alone is a real danger time for them, especially around binging. It's a time when all those containers, the wrappers, the food seem to hold a particularly strong appeal. It's also when the messages to go out and get food or go and just eat appear. Some of my clients have become downright frightened of being alone and even go to great lengths to avoid it. But here's the thing, right? Being alone is a wonderful time to reflect on and enjoy your progress, or to mindfully eat some healthy food, cherish every last bite, let it nourish your body and soul. Time alone is when you can journal, set goals, problem solve obstacles, make plans to move our lives forward. When we can look at pictures of our loved ones, feel grateful for they're brought into our lives. Time alone is when we can develop insights and breakthroughs through deep thought and reflection, when we can sing aloud, start a new project, take a nap, stare at the dog, give ourselves a hug. When we're alone, we can simply breathe and be. But our inner critics will say time alone can be filled with binges and junk food. But no, that's not worth it. It's not important. And remember, in this day and age, there are so many opportunities to not be alone, but reach out and be part of something. Next one is feeling ashamed. We've all been there, right? But how can you obliterate shame and desperation around food? See, shame and desperation are 2 of your inner critic's biggest tools. For example, let's just say your inner critic just found a hole in your plan, okay? You went out, drank just a tiny bit too much. When you came home, mind-blowing, you came home with the pizza, the kebab, and you had a terrible late night binge. Then you tossed and turned all night, trying desperately to digest that awful amount of food. You get up in the morning after a few hours of sleep, you stumble along, you're feeling bloated, your head throbbing, you're barely able to start the day, struggling, brushing your teeth out, struggle, you stumble into the shower, you think, how am I going to get through the day? That's about when your inner critic should start whispering, you're such a failure. You're never going to be healthy and thin. You're worthless. You might as well give up and just be fat and happy. Let's just get started. You blew it yesterday. Let's just keep going. But none of this is true. You see, it's only your critic's way of setting you up for the next binge. It's trying to weaken your self-concern. It's trying to make you feel incapable of resisting. Essentially, it's saying life is miserable because you're pathetic, but there's always one good thing we can do, which is binge. But here's the point, right? Every single insecure, shameful, and desperate thought regarding food and eating is only your inner critic screaming at you to set up the next binge. So whenever you hear those thoughts, go, hey, shut up, critic, or in my case, shut up, Fred. I know what you're doing. Get back in your box. And either resume your plan, which worked best for you, or give yourself some thinking time to adjust the plan and then prevent the critic from fooling you again. Then we got feeling anxious. Now, it's true, certain foods can help reduce anxiety, but for binge eaters and emotion eaters, we really must plan them into your food plan and not eat them impulsively, because out of control eating increases anxiety much more so than reduction you might expect from the food itself. If you stick to the principle of moving your food decisions from emotions to intellect, life is so much easier. Another perspective is that eating the food a critic suggests to quiet anxiety only tells the critic that you can't handle the anxiety itself, which is the opposite of what you want to do. What you want to do is show the critic you're willing to put up with any level of emotional discomfort in order to stick to your plan. Now, from this perspective, anxiety is an opportunity to make your inner critic suffer, because it will get all excited about the possibilities. Then all of a sudden it gets much more demoralized when you don't resort to it. And that's a good thing. But here's a paradigm shift you might want to consider when you're experiencing anxiety. The nightmare we fear most is the one we've already lived through. See, in my 30 plus years of dealing with this, in my last 10 years of recovery, and as I talk to literally thousands of people, not to mention my own relentless soul searching, journaling, and therapy itself, this quote from child psychologist Doral W. Winnicott about fear is perhaps my favorite. See, I constantly see people, and myself included, obsessing about what if X happens or Y happens, when clearly it's the pain of what already has happened that they're reliving and projecting into their current circumstances. What if my business fails? When clearly it's instability and insecurity of previous environment they're reliving. What if the love of my life leaves me? When clearly it's the pain of having been left unloved in the past resurfacing. What if I get some horrible illness and lose my mobility and or independence? When clearly it's a pain of not having fully lived life to date which ails them. The problem with all of this is that it keeps us living in the past. And then you create this self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're constantly worried about your business failing, you're draining energy from actually building your business and seeing opportunities right in front of you. If you're constantly terrified your love will leave you, you're not fully in the present, connected with him or her on the deepest level, thereby making it more likely they will leave. If you're constantly worried about illness, you're sacrificing mental energy, which can be focused on improving your health and fitness, thereby making you less than you could be. What I try to do when I find myself obsessing about fear is ask myself, how is this most like what I've already been through, and how is it different? That usually calms you down enough to get me focused again in the present and on improving my life and pursuing my goals and relationships. Remember, the nightmare we fear the most is the one we've already been through. Then we get to apathy. You know, when you just don't care? Well, here's something for you. What if you just don't care whether you overeat or not? One of the hardest things most people have to deal with from their critic is the fluff it. I just don't care about my plan anymore. Let's just stuff our faces. The critic wins. Yes, you want to enhance your motivation. Make a list of the way you're doing this in the future you're wanting to achieve, and then read it out loud every day. Again, in my program, I talk about creating the big whys and the big why not. Again, when you create that big why, it's there. When you create a vision of the future, you're trying to avoid too, which is why I have the big why not. But more importantly, you need to answer that crazy question for yourself. Why do you have to care? Why can't there be some things you do to take care of yourself regardless of whether you feel like it or not? Why do you have to be in love with your feelings? Why can't you just eat healthy regardless of what you feel like? In fact, some people can get themselves to do good things themselves because they don't care. See, the lie in the critic whisper there is, you don't care, so therefore you'll have a binge. It is in the therefore part. There will inevitably be times you don't care. Indifference is a natural part of recovery, but that's okay. You don't have to care. You only have to do what's right. But remember, there's one more important piece of the solution. Remind yourself you care, your critic doesn't. If you really didn't care, you wouldn't be here today. You care deeply, but your critic couldn't care less. It would have given you lots of reasons not to come on this tonight. In fact, I can guarantee you, when you say you're coming on tomorrow night, after tonight, he'll go, don't do that, waste your time. What does he know? He doesn't understand you, he's upset you. The thought, I don't care, is just the critic doing what it always does, lying to convince you its thoughts are your own, but they're not. A big part of what I do is to help people stop overeating, is show them how to aggressively separate their own identity from their inner critic's nasty thoughts. Then we come to sneak eating. If any of you watched my video about my story, I explain about the cinnamon swirls. And to give you a quick précis, now, I understand, as an emotional eater and a food addict, I used to lie about food, I used to hide food, I used to cheat, I was awful, right? And that's a different email, different story, different podcast, different course, okay? But one of the stories I relate is cinnamon swirls. We were out visiting Wiltshire, and there was some duck pond, and we were going to feed some ducks. And I went to go and get to Morrison's, which was just up a hill, to get some bread. I know, no, you don't feed ducks bread, but that's good tip for you there. But as I walked through the door, there were these cinnamon swirls. Now they used to be, I love them, still do. And there's a pack of 4. Now I went and bought a pack of 4, walked out of the shop, and then realized didn't have the bread. I had to go back in and buy the bread, and then walked back to the bread and was eating the cinnamon swirls as fast as I could. Now, when I walked in and saw them, I didn't think, oh, that'd be nice. Ebony and me can have something to eat and come and have something to eat. That'd be great. No, it's how quickly can I eat them? As I was walking down the hill, came around the corner, I literally had the last one in my mouth and was there. So, and Carmen saw me and went, oh my God, what are you doing? I actually had a food mouth. Now, that was me sneaking that in. Now, the problem, here's an interesting thing, is Carmen thought I only had the one. She didn't realize 4. And then when I told the story 5 years later, she's looking at me going, you lied to me. So it always comes back and bites you in the backside. But if your critic is getting you to sneak eat, what it's really up to is looking for an opportunity to shame and guilt you. Because you see, shame and guilt will wear you down. And your critic desperately wants to wear you down, so you'll feel too weak to restrain its stupid urges. It took me a long time to realize this. See, excessive guilt and shame is what almost always drives a binge. It's always binge motivated. The whole purpose of holding on to them is so that your critic can convince you that you're a pathetic person with no ability to refrain from eating anything that tastes good. So you might as well just give up and accept being a happy fat person, or that you don't deserve to be thin, or anything else can try and tell you to convince you to feed yourself. So if you are sneak eating, what you want to do is ask yourself, why? Why can't I or won't I eat this in front of other people? See, sneak eating is a clear signal you need to evaluate your plan. You should be perfectly comfortable and accepting about everything you're eating when it's 100% on your plan, and perfectly willing to eat in front of anyone. That way your critic can't weigh you down with guilt and shame and make you feel too weak to resist the next binge. Sneak eating is like Your plan's check engine light. If you notice you're doing it, ask yourself if you really believe in what you're eating and adjust it until you do. And then eat with joy and free of shame. The last one is feeling powerless. See, you can overcome virtually any binge eating problem as long as you don't make one cardinal sin. Do you know what it is? Right? It's pretending you're powerless over food. It's as if there was some mysterious force which overtakes you, essentially knocking you unconscious, getting you to get in your car, take the keys out of your pocket, start the car, pull it out of your drive to the supermarket, find a parking spot, taking the keys out of the car, walking into the supermarket, selecting the binge food that the critics told you in the right amount, the right variety, walk to the self-checkout, wait in line, put the binge food in the bags, take out your credit card, pay for it, sign, take the bags to the car, open the package with your hands, take out the first bite of the package, put it in your mouth, chew and swallow. Rubbish. At every step along the way, you can intervene to stop that episode. Now, your critic would love you to believe that you can't. It doesn't want you to notice that every step along the way is a lever you can pull the other way. It says you're powerless, diseased, a helpless little child in the face of all of that mad advertising, all of the bags, the boxes, the marketing, right? Resolve right here and now never to pretend you're powerless over food, no matter whether you felt out of control for 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 years. You can actually take back the reins and stop this train wreck. You can reverse the direction. You can declare yourself 100% confident that you are in control and decide exactly what healthy versus binge food is. And the behavior is for you personally. Then listen for your critic trying to convince you to break and ignore that stupid idea. The notion, though, of powerlessness is the disease, not the powerlessness itself. So that is tonight's. That is day 3 of the module. That is a brand new training that I've dropped for today, and I've changed the one. Anybody have any questions? Pop them in the chat, in the Q&A. Might have upset 2 people. I've lost 2. Have I said anything that offended anybody? Anyone disagree with what I said? Anybody agree with what I said? That was awesome and excellent. Thank you, Wayne. Alex, absolutely 100% should. Yes. Totally needs to be. And I think the problem is people bandy about food addiction too much and people are addicted to food. Trust me, you know if you're addicted to food. It's the same as any other addiction. The first thing you think about, and you will lie and you'll cheat. I think food addiction gets bandied about, but we don't talk about emotional eating because people encourage it. People encourage it too much, right? From learned behaviors, from things that happened in the past, it's a problem. I think food addiction should be talked about. We should talk about what we, here's a fact for you, right? In the US, there is more time booked for MRI scanners by food companies than there is on Alzheimer's research. It's shocking. The big food companies spend billions of dollars globally a year deciding the right mixture of food, and people have eat it and they'll check receptors in the brain. It's shocking. So yeah, people need to, and again, in 30 years' time, they might be doing the whole things like they did on tobacco industry with the food industry, because the food industry know what they're doing and they're putting into food. And even though they say it's regulated and people test it, it's not. So I think again, same time, 30 years time, our children's children could be, or our children could be suing the food industry, or certain people could be. Thank you. Sarah, I'm glad to, yeah, I know. Again, companies do this. They give huge portions. America's even worse because they make them that big. And so that's whole to-go industry. We know it's so big in the UK, but they make portions so ridiculously sized that you're like, what's all that about? So good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Say that wasn't my plan originally, but I'd say this is really important. I think more people need to hear this. So this is probably one of this is normally a module in my 6-week program, but I took a bit out of it and bought it because I thought it was really important to people to hear, because the feedback I've had from this session, I've delivered it live as well, has been really quite powerful. So thank you very much. And thank you for that feedback. It's great. Excellent. Well, I'll keep you a bit later tonight because this was a big one. Thank you very much, guys. There is a worksheet tonight. It's not totally related, but I'll post it. It's just a guide to help you. It's a tool which will help track some of this information. That'll be out tonight. Because I changed it at the last minute to include this. So, but it'll be a bonus worksheet. It'll be self-explanatory, and if it's not, I'll do a little form to help you, a little video to go with it. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you being here all week. Looking forward to tomorrow night, Thursday. So I'll see you tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Thank you very much, guys.